Roughly 3 decades before the Battle of Yavin, the Sith Lord Darth Tyrannus recruited a bounty hunter named Jango Fett, a former Mandalorian, as the host for a clone army, part of the scheme that would lead to the downfall of the Jedi Order. Jango agreed on one condition: he wanted the first clone for himself. Unlike the soldiers, this clone was to undergo no growth acceleration, and none of his structure was to be tampered with. Naming this son of his Boba, Jango taught the young boy all he knew, wanting Boba to continue his legacy once he was gone. At the start of the Clone Wars, during the Battle of Geonosis, Boba would be met by his father's death at the hands of Jedi Master Mace Windu. Swearing vengeance against the Order and Windu, Boba sought tutelage from the likes of Aurra Sing and other notable bounty hunters, who took it upon themselves to finish the young man's training. Boba attempted to take revenge against Windu, but his efforts proved futile. He was eventually forced to give up his quest for revenge once the execution of Order 66 and the beginning of the Great Jedi Purge was instigated. Using his now developed skills, Fett became the most feared and infamous bounty hunter in the galaxy, taking jobs from the scummy crime lord Jabba the Hutt or from Darth Vader and the Galactic Empire. It didn't matter what job needed doing, whether it was infiltration or assassination. Boba Fett was the man for the job, assuming the price was right. After capturing the rebel smuggler Han Solo, Boba travelled to Tatooine to bring Jabba his most valued prize. Unfortunately, Fett didn't have a lot of time to celebrate. When Solo's friends, Leia Organa, Lando Calrissian, and the Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker came to rescue Jabba's prisoner, an intense battle took place in the Dune Sea. In the midst of the chaos, Boba was caught off guard and thrown into the Sarlacc pit. Rumours of Boba's survival to this day continue to persist, still spreading fear throughout the galaxy. Born under the name of Slade Wilson, the man that would become known as Deathstroke lied about his age whilst he was 16 so he could join the military. Quickly climbing through the ranks, Slade volunteered for an experimental procedure, which ultimately provided him with a phenomenal boost to his physical attributes. He also went on to marry one of his high-ranking military officers, Ada Lynn Kane. However, due to the initial side effects of the serum used on him, Slade fell in and out of healthiness, and was discharged from the military. Unfortunately, his best friend William Wintergreen was kidnapped. When the army refused to rescue the man, Slade took it upon himself to rescue his friend. Afterwards, he began working as a mercenary, taking on jobs that were considered otherwise impossible to complete. During his career, Slade's perseverance was challenged too many times to count. Such events included Wilson coming into conflict with the likes of the Teen Titans and Batman, as well as being confronted by the death of his two sons, Grant and Joe, the first of which died trying to be too much like Deathstroke, but also trying to be as different from Slade as possible. The second of which, Slade was forced to kill himself after he became possessed and subsequently saved the world, while also earning him a mutual respect from the likes of Dick Grayson and the Changeling, but this also forced him to endure attempts made on his life by his now ex-wife. After being framed for an assassination attempt on the American president, Slade was recruited to the government unit Checkmate, who promised to grant him the proof of his innocence. After several assignments, Slade was caught in an explosion which leveled a building on top of him. However, due to his inherent healing factor, he survived, but was mysteriously given back his younger body, at the cost of his memory. No longer remembering the feelings for the few friends that he still had, Slade abandoned his position as a merc and went into a life of seclusion. Villain, anti-hero, soldier, assassin. Slade Wilson has left behind a legacy that tells a story of unwavering professionalism, honor, and perseverance. A legacy that is the story of Deathstroke the Terminator.
Round 1.
As an unaltered clone of Jango, Boba Fett inherited his father's innate physical qualities. His physical fortitude, even at a young age, was exceptional, having dispatched multiple opponents and participated in lengthy missions with no sign of tiring. By the time of Return of the Jedi, he was well within his physical prime, and he was without a doubt one of the most physically capable, non-force sensitive, or cybernetically augmented beings within the galaxy. Despite sporting a relatively thin build, Boba's strength was daunting. As a child, he's been known to rip a tooth from a bolyeg, although this takes place off-panel and could be partially attributed to the momentum used from his jetpack, yet it is still an impressive feat regardless. What's more, by the time of his prime, he's been known to hold back fellow bounty hunter Bosk, a member of the Trandoshan race, who are noted for their incredible physical strength. Boba's speed and agility were nothing short of brilliant. He's been depicted disarming foes before they can comprehend and has evaded blaster fire, though his ability to evade blaster fire is more akin to his ability to stay out of his enemy's sights as opposed to evading the blaster bolts themselves, as these projectiles are known to fly through the air at speeds that vary from hypersonic rates to the speed of light, and the jetpack for which Boba uses to enhance his speed only has a top speed of 145 km an hour. Still, Boba's ability to move quicker than other trained marksmen can aim is very impressive. Alongside this, Boba has been described as being capable of drawing his rifle in less time than a single heartbeat. Furthermore, as stated previously, to enhance his speed to a greater degree, he would employ the use of a Z6 jetpack, much like his father. This valuable piece of equipment could reach speeds of 145 km an hour, or 90 miles per hour, for the duration of an entire minute. However, the jetpack was still a large target and easily damaged, which proved fatal for Jango and was disastrous for Boba as well, as both men appear to prefer this mechanical use of speed as opposed to their natural abilities. Boba's tenacity and resilience were not to be trifled with. Within the Legends continuity, Boba managed to withstand the stomach acids of the Sarlacc, something that left his fellow bounty hunters in awe, especially since it was stated that no other sentient should have survived. Boba has also fought through blaster wounds and has tanked hits from the heavily armoured Proxy during the Battle of Kamino, and being buried beneath debris. Some of these durability feats are partially attributed to Boba's Mandalorian armour, but this suit of his isn't exactly going to be excluded within this matchup. Needless to say, Boba's peak physical prowess serves him well on his many missions against both groups of assailants and Force wielders alike. Before his physical augmentation, Slade Wilson was already at the peak of his physical prime. After he underwent his medical experiment, Deathstroke's physique was pushed into the realms of superhuman, as opposed to the serum being intended to enhance his resistance to truth serums. As a result, Deathstroke's strength was phenomenal. Slade has repeatedly overpowered superhuman opponents, including the likes of Cyborg, Hawkman, Starfire, and Wonder Girl, and has traded blows with a Lobo copy. His implementation of this might was superb, allowing him to smash through solid steel doors and demolish enemies' weapons, casually break bones, and slice through a plane wing. Deathstroke's speed and agility were a sight to behold. The serum used on his body has been officially noted as boosting his reflexes to 10 times that of an ordinary man. He has repeatedly moved too fast for his enemies to keep pace, and that includes both peak human and superhuman foes alike, such as Batman and Nightwing, and Hawkman. And he has even briefly kept his distance from a speeding train. A master of agility, Deathstroke's application of acrobatics made those of a professional gymnast look amateurish. He's managed to clear a 60-foot gap between buildings, has jumped from several stories, casually deflected bullets and loose projectiles, even lasers, once whilst heavily injured and with his strength weakened. Slade's brain was enhanced to the point where he uses 90% of his brain's total capacity, in a sense allowing him to think and process information 9 times faster than an ordinary human. Essentially, his brain is a supercomputer, allowing him to better predict his enemy's actions and learn new fighting styles at an accelerated rate, which we'll go into later. In addition, Wilson's senses were also boosted to an incredible level, boosting his sight to allow him to pull off some amazing uses of accuracy, and his senses make it nigh impossible to sneak up on him. Coupling these senses with his enhanced superbrain, Deathstroke has been able to react to speeding opponents all the while his back is turned, and with his attention fixated on other factors. In addition, it is also heavily implied that Slade's perception of time has been altered, as shown by his ability to perceive travelling heat vision, and time itself being described as a series of snapshots from his point of view. Alongside all of this, Deathstroke's endurance and durability were amazing. He's fought and remained on the run for days with no rest or food, fought through extensive amounts of bullet wounds and stabbing wounds, and has endured hits from superpowered opponents such as Superboy, Lobo, and whilst amplified by the God Killer sword, he managed to survive hits from the likes of Wonder Woman and Superman. Although his ability to survive these ordeals was circumstantial, his ability to continue fighting is a testament to his own personal perseverance, something he often reinforces through meditation, increasing his levels of mental discipline. And lastly, Deathstroke possesses a healing factor. Afforded to him through his medical experiment, this ability grants Slade an increased resistance to physical injury, to the point where external damage is of little to no consequence, and his ability to heal from deep stab wounds and bullets can be done within a few hours to a day at most. This has allowed Deathstroke to revive within a few hours after being shot directly through the head. Naturally, this ability also grants him an immunity and adaptability to harmful substances such as gases or poisons. Within the New 52 retcon, we are provided with more information on how this healing ability works. Slade is capable of using his mind to speed up his healing process, as shown by his ability to survive being stabbed and subsequently having a submarine thrown on top of him. And within an hour, he was right back in action. For those of you who are wondering why his right eye didn't grow back, it's simple. His healing factor is just that. It is not regeneration factor attributed to beings such as Wolverine or Deadpool. Slade can't grow back what doesn't exist anymore. There needs to be at least something left. Some of Deathstroke's survival feats here are partially attributed to his Prometheum chainmail and nth metal armor, but these pieces of armor will be included in this fight, so the demonstrations are still viable. So overall, Deathstroke is an absolute physical powerhouse. While Deathstroke is labelled as both metahuman and superhuman in some cases, this does not automatically place him above Boba just because Fett is only labelled as peak human. Boba and Deathstroke are from two completely different franchises, and the conditions for what is considered superhuman in one of these universes does not necessarily equate to the requirements of such condition in another franchise. What decides the edge here is feats. Deathstroke has repeatedly overpowered opponents that sit comfortably above the beings that Boba has faced, for the most part, such as Cyborg and Wonder Girl, the former of which is known to have a strength threshold of 5 tons minimum, and the second possessed enough strength to stop a speeding truck. Boba does hold an advantage in his jetpack's use of speed, yet Slade has proven that his enhanced reflexes and senses can allow him to anticipate such an advantage before. And this was while he wasn't focused on his attacker. And lastly, Boba's feat of surviving the Sarlacc stomach is an incredible accomplishment, there is no denying that. But given Slade's already proven ability to withstand copious amounts of punishment, I believe he could perform to a similar degree after such a trial. After all, Slade is the man who has been known to withstand 9 consecutive days of electrifying torture, with little to no sleep, and no food or water, and recovered within a few hours. He has also withstood similar if not greater impacts of blunt force trauma, and his healing factor, even at its lowest levels, further adds to his resistance to physical injury, as it can allow him to even partially negate minor damage altogether. Deathstroke is awarded the advantage in physicality.
Round 2.
As the most accomplished bounty hunter in the galaxy, Boba Fett was hired for a wide array of missions, and as such, armed himself to the teeth. Donning a suit of traditional Mandalorian armor like his father, Boba's armor was comprised of Duraplast, an improved variation of Durasteel. This armor protected Boba against light blaster fire and lasers, kinetic impacts, explosions, and light hits from lightsabers. However, his body was not entirely covered, as his limbs and joints were left exposed, yet his undergarments were comprised of a cloth that protected him against fire and the elements. Boba's Mandalorian helmet housed multiple forms of visual frequencies, such as infrared along with motion and sound sensors, adding to his spatial awareness. It also protected him from harmful bursts of bright light, adjusting to the surrounding light within a microsecond, rendering the effects of flash grenades all but useless against Boba. The helmet also protected Boba from lethal gases and held an internal supply of oxygen that lasted for 2 hours. Fett's go-to firearm was a custom EE-3 carbine rifle. Boba opted to saw off the end of the barrel, allowing the weapon to be more effectively wielded in close quarters. He also replaced the standard stock with a folding adjustable stock, making the weapon easier to wield with one hand while still containing its long-range destructive capacity. In addition, he outfitted his rifle with a scope for improved accuracy. Alongside this, Boba made use of his gauntlets, which housed multiple weapons that amplified his destructive versatility, such as a wrist-mounted flamethrower, mini concussion rockets, a Dur-24 wrist laser, and even a fiber cord launcher, which he could use to grapple his opposition, as he demonstrated against Luke Skywalker. Although previously mentioned, Boba's jetpack is one of his most valuable assets in a fight and is worthy of additional elaboration. This piece of hardware allows Boba to enhance his combative speed, making it harder for his enemies to place their shots on him, and ultimately grants him an ability to seek greater strategic position that he would otherwise not be able to reach. The jetpack also housed another rocket that was fired from within, much like Jango's. However, as explained earlier, the jetpack was not infallible, as it was easily damaged due to its obvious exposure. In addition to all this, Boba concealed the majority of his other weapons within his suit. These tiny pieces of lethality consisted of knee-pad dart rocket launchers and thermal detonators, among others. During the Battle of Kamino, Boba also made use of twin K-11 blaster pistols, allowing him to gun down multiple opponents in quick succession in close quarters, a similar method to his father. When cornered by Ram Kota and Proxy, Boba let out a sonic emitter, which not only overloaded Kota's senses, but also disrupted Proxy's onboard electronics. While many of these weapons can be hard to utilize to their greatest effect, this was not an issue for Boba, as this man has been said to have mastered every weapon in the galaxy, save for the lightsaber. And as such, he turned himself into a walking weapons cache, enhancing his versatility and allowing him to keep any enemy on their toes due to his unpredictable lethality. Deathstroke is a walking armory. His armor throughout its various appearances has differentiated. His old incarnation consisted of him donning a battlesuit comprised solely of Promethean mesh alloy. However, within his new 52 incarnation, along with the visible mesh, Deathstroke is seen donning the infamous Nth metal armor. The Promethean mesh is designed to absorb and dissipate harmful energy blasts and can withstand kinetic impacts, to the point where Deathstroke has been completely unaffected by otherwise lethal energy bursts projected by starfire. The Nth metal is a magical material that Hawkman describes as a living weapon, with numerous unusual qualities. The obvious quality was its nigh indestructibility, as can be seen by its ability to take a direct hit from a thrown submarine. Alongside this, Deathstroke and Hawkman both took note of how the armor bolsters Slade's already incredible strength and other natural abilities, along with his increased healing, which only further amplifies his ability to recover from injury at a rapid rate. Upon completion of his mission to destroy the Lobo copy, Deathstroke revealed a hidden jetpack within his suit. However, given that he hadn't made use of it before or since this one occasion, it is unlikely to come into play, as he inferred that he had planned to use it for the mission. However, he did not gain all the benefits that Hawkman did from his armor, as they believed his armor to be merged with other Earth-based metals. His armor housed a thermal detonator within. Naturally, bullet impacts and knife attacks are of little consequence to Deathstroke, even despite the fact that his suit has been damaged in such a manner before. Yet this, in all honesty, is so inconsistent that it appears to be there for the sake of plot convenience. And since there is no plot involved in the Versus series, this won't factor in. The mask that Slade wore in his old suit possessed infrared frequencies and sound amplifiers, yet it is unknown as to whether or not his Nth metal helmet does the same. Deathstroke's most iconic weapon was his energy staff. Comprised of promethium and not indestructible, this weapon was capable of charging up and releasing energy bolts and could do varying degrees of damage, depending on the weapon's power settings, ranging from the ability to incapacitate, kill, destroy full-size vehicles, and blow holes through thick walls, The staff was also retractable and could be effectively wielded as a tonfa, and possessed fingerprint and telescopic micro-rays that acted as a security device and prevented anyone other than Slade from firing the weapon. Within the New 52 universe, this weapon also appears to now be detachable, allowing Wilson to wield it as two separate close-quarter tonfas. His other melee weapons included a standard combat knife and various broadswords. His weapons handler, Squirrel, noted that his sword within the old canon was comprised of Spanish steel and was designed to take as much punishment as possible, and this is definitely true, given how it could withstand low-caliber bullet and laser impacts and being forced through other swords. Even his New 52 swords appear to be built to a similar standard, as can be seen by his ability to slice clean through a plane's wing with no resulting damage to his weapon. As a former military man, Slade Wilson makes frequent use of firearms, often employing dual 9mm Berettas, and even an adjustable sniper pistol. In addition, he's been seen making use of a variety of other firearms, ranging from single-handed machine guns and assault rifles. Deathstroke frequented the use of multiple forms of thrown weapons, ranging from frag grenades, flashbang grenades, and gas grenades. He concealed a wrist-mounted grappling hook within both his arms, allowing him to grapple his opponents and potentially gain greater positioning. And lastly, much like Batman, Deathstroke wears a utility belt, housing additional bullets and gadgets, such as a loose grappling cable. Regardless of who he goes up against, Deathstroke's equipment provides him with a ton of combative benefits that will prove useful in any situation. Much like the last round, it's pretty easy to see who has the overall advantage here. The respective armor that both combatants wear is pretty comparable, though I would argue Deathstroke's body to be more overly protected due to his armor covering more of his body. After that, Boba's weaponry simply provides him with a superior level of lethality. Now this doesn't mean Deathstroke's weapons will be completely useless against Boba, as his sword and firearms could still prove useful against Boba's exposed limbs and jetpack, and his staff has the potential to knock Fett off balance, and the Promethean Mesh's ability to absorb energy could protect him against Boba's energy-based blasters to a degree. However, while Deathstroke can compensate for Boba's advantage, that does not detract from the fact that the advantage still remains in Fett's corner, as compensating for your disadvantages falls in line with skill and tactics. Boba Fett is awarded the edge for his weaponry and equipment.
Round 3.
Boba Fett was regarded as the most feared bounty hunter in the galaxy, being confirmed to have mastered every weapon his galaxy had to offer, save for the lightsaber of course. It didn't matter what weapon he was wielding, he could defeat his opposition just as proficiently. His preferred use of weaponry when a confrontation begins is his blasters, an ability to rely on his astounding marksmanship. Boba has used his skills in accuracy to outdraw multiple opponents at once, and disarm enemies of their weapons. Naturally, long-range shots are not an issue for Boba, sniper rifle or not. This accuracy was inherited from his father and was hardwired into every clone of Jango, Boba included. His half-brother, Connor Freeman, used his skill to kill a thug without even looking at him, and Connor is the son of another clone, and as such only inherited some of this potential, implying that Boba's skills in this field are at a minimum a match for this level of prestige, which is further backed up by his ability to kill multiple rebels during the Battle of Kamino without having to face some of his targets, which also speaks to his spatial awareness. This preference for marksmanship comes from Boba's personalized training from Jango, as opposed to the other clones attending classes. Jango taught Boba that the best mode of operation for a bounty hunter was to avoid direct confrontation where possible. However, since his training with his father was cut short, Boba was trained by other bounty hunters such as Aurra Sing and Boss. As such, their influence shaped Boba into something of a walking paradox between the approaches of all his teachers, as he had no trouble operating at a distance like a true assassin, but he was also much more inclined to resort to a head-to-head fight. When bereft of his rifle, Boba appears to incorporate the use of his other weapons into an offensive of overwhelming firepower, using every tool at his disposal. Boba's martial prowess was commendable, having been trained in this field by his father, to the point where he was able to land well in a brief exchange with Obi-Wan Kenobi just a few months after Revenge of the Sith, with Kenobi taking note of Boba using the same moves as his father. Alongside this, Boba has used his martial prowess and skills in melee combat to kill a man with a single Deathstroke and knock Ramco to flat. Although Boba can sometimes be perceived as straightforward from time to time, he was also very cunning and had no problem at employing unorthodox tactics to great effect, allowing him to catch his enemies by surprise. Against Heian's gangsters, he deliberately angered a Rancor, causing it to kill most of his enemies, and subsequently using his jetpack to kill the beast afterwards. During his fight with Vader, when the Sith Lord attempted to compel Fett to put down the package he was after, Boba feinted accidentally falling off the nearby cliff, and using Vader's surprise to catch the Dark Lord off guard, opening him up to attack, and giving Boba the opportunity he needed to escape. He would do something similar at the conclusion of his fight with Kota and Proxy. Boba Fett's reputation as the most feared bounty hunter in the galaxy is irrefutable. As the world's greatest assassin and a former military man, Deathstroke's skills and experience are without question. Aquaman considered him to be a noble opponent, and as an assassin, one of Deathstroke's modes of operation was to kill his target from a distance, and his affinity for marksmanship was indisputable, easily a match for fellow world-class assassin Deadshot. But whereas Deadshot used advanced weapons technology to boost his capabilities in this field, Deathstroke relied on his enhanced sense of sight and perception, which has allowed him to hit incredibly small targets and opponents moving at incredible rates of speed. He has also done this whilst being dragged through the air after latching himself onto Hawkman and managed to shoot past the Thangarian's armor and impact with his shoulder. He could apply this level of precision to virtually any weapon, conventional or unusual, whether he is using throwing knives or even a paperclip. Slade's martial prowess was astounding. He is believed to have mastered every martial art known to man, an achievement accomplished by his brain's 90% use of its capacity, which allows him to process information at a rapid rate, and as such allows for incredibly fast learning. Slade has repeatedly implemented his skills in this field to great effect, having bested other renowned martial artists such as Batman, Nightwing, and even multiple members of the Teen Titans at once. Alongside this, Deathstroke has also mastered multiple sword fighting techniques, and has no trouble fighting with single or dual swords. He would also wield other weapons in tandem with his swords, such as his combat knife, small-handed firearms, and his staff, making him even more lethal and unpredictable. As a tactician, Slade is nothing short of brilliant, his tactical abilities being acknowledged by the likes of Batman and Superman. This is where Slade's brain capacity truly shines. His brain is essentially a supercomputer. Due to his extensive experience and increased capacity, Slade is essentially able to deduct how his opponents fight and can tell when a specific strategy is being used against him. In his own words, he knows every move before you make it. However, there are a few opponents who are exceptionally unorthodox that have been able to catch him off guard, such as Batman and the Lobo copy. The first being a testament to the skill of the Caped Crusader, and the second being due to Lobo being a rapid berserker, something which Slade has acknowledged that you simply cannot outthink. Even so, Slade has proven very consistently that he can regain his composure almost as quickly as he loses it. Slade's spatial awareness was invaluable, another holdover from his training with his to-be wife. Naturally, his senses only bolstered his capabilities here, allowing him to play multiple opponents against each other, and to get the drop on unsuspecting enemies who are attempting to sneak up on Slade themselves. Slade also possessed talents with improvised weaponry, capable of using almost anything as a lethal weapon. When thrown into a fight cold with a lone adversary, Deathstroke often prefers to apply his martial prowess and outfight his opponent, and would adjust his tactics to his opponent's actions, such as how he employed the use of his grappling hook to restrain Hawkman whilst being dragged through the air to force the fight onto an even playing field, or how he played on the emotions of the vigilante, or how he would often use his environment to his advantage. On the whole, Deathstroke's extensive experience awards him a reputation as the world's greatest assassin that is worthy of both fear and respect. This is definitely the most difficult section to call, and as opposed to my typical format, will instead be worked into the final verdict. The obvious disparity between the two would be the respective skills in hand-to-hand combat, in which Deathstroke is simply the more accomplished of the two. That's not to say Boba would be helpless in an unarmed fight against Slade, as shown by his ability to contend with other superpowered beings. yet he would still be hard pressed to gain an advantage through this style of fighting. However, given Boba's affinity for assertive use of his weaponry, at a distance he would have the advantage. Although Deathstroke can match Boba's marksmanship, he would be hard pressed to find a way of closing the distance, especially if Boba makes good enough use of his jetpack. That said, Deathstroke is known to have experience in the use of such mobility enhancing tactics, so there are ways in which he can close the distance. Whether by way of his grappling hook in an attempt to restrain Boba, or by using the environment for distraction. As Green Arrow would say, with Deathstroke everything is calculated. Slade is constantly coming up with new strategies in battle, continuously observing his foe's actions and responding accordingly. That's not to say Boba can or hasn't done the same, his fights with Vader and the Rebels being chief examples, as he would have deducted that once he was cornered, he wouldn't have been able to simply fight his way out. So he employed a distraction. Ultimately, I feel the verdict for this round comes down to not who is more inherently skilled, but whose tactics are more favourable, and who can rally faster from any unsuspected setbacks quicker. At a distance, I favour Boba, but considering Deathstroke's enhanced brain function and supercomputer aptitude for strategic thinking, there is a possibility that he may be able to negate this.
Final round.
As a final tally for this matchup, I would only give the victor a 6 out of 10 majority. This fight will take place at the Gotham City dockyard, in which Deathstroke fought Batman within the Arkham Origins trailer, with Slade standing in for himself, and Boba standing in for Batman, though both combatants will be starting on the ground as opposed to the original fight. Boba would likely shoot first, attempting to pin Slade down with suppressive fire. Using the containers for cover, Deathstroke returns fire. The combatants may even land a few glancing blows against each other's armor, but the damage will be of little consequence. Knowing he can't win from this distance, Deathstroke decides to close the gap, employing his acrobatic maneuvers to evade his enemy's shots whilst rebounding off the containers, whilst returning fire with his staff, using it to destroy the environment around his foe, maybe blowing up a nearby car or destroying an overhead crane, forcing Boba to split his attention. With distance closed, Deathstroke is now more able to comfortably cope with Boba's weaponry advantage. Now the firefight is evenly matched, the EE-3 and Power Staff exchanging destructive blasts. Attempting to retake the advantage, Boba fires one of his rockets towards the Terminator, while dashing forward with a quick jetpack burst, slamming into Deathstroke, trying to stun him against a wall, but Slade is unfazed and retaliates with a headbutt. Boba is unhurt but stunned, shocked by the force behind Slade's strength. Retaliating by shooting himself up and away into the air, Boba quickly backs off. Deathstroke, now having seen Boba's use of flight, anticipates this and grabs Boba's foot or latches on with his grappling hook. As Boba struggles to shake Slade off, he suddenly finds himself descending rapidly. Just before he lands, he realizes that Slade has shot his jetpack, disabling it. As they land, both are unfazed by the impact, but Slade lands on his feet and leaps towards the bounty hunter, attempting to impale him with his sword. But Boba rolls away at the last second and immediately responds with his own grappling hook. At this vital point, he either succeeds in disarming Slade of his weapon, or his attack is evaded. Now they would engage in straight-up close-quarters combat. The exchange will be brutal, with Deathstroke implementing his sword or, if disarmed, his knife and pistols, while Boba implements strikes of his rifle. It would go on for several minutes, but the Terminator would land more decisive blows, striking out at Boba's exposed limbs, whilst retaining greater composure from the strikes his enemy lands. Sooner or later, whether by way of gunshot to the kneecap, followed by neck snap, or by way of dismemberment, followed by decapitation, the super soldier would prevail. And in conclusion, I declare Slade Wilson, the Terminator, the world-class assassin, the man known as Deathstroke, the winner. Now of course, ladies and gents, this match is all just my own opinion. I actually almost refrained from doing it as I couldn't decide on a winner. This match is pretty popular amongst the varying fan bases, and most of the time people seem to think it's one-sided in either combatant's favour, but I honestly don't think so. Anyway, on another note, today is the channel's first anniversary, and I'd like to thank all of you for a great first year. And here's to an even better second year. Well, thank you all again for watching. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I shall see you all next time. May the Force be with you.
Plums.